What is wrong with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? What has happened to them this season? Through 7 weeks, the Buccaneers are just 3-4 and coming off an embarrassing 21-3 loss to the previously 1-5 Carolina Panthers, who fired their head coach 2 weeks ago. He's starting backup quarterback PJ Walker and just traded star running back Christian McCaffrey 3 days before Sunday's game. This is the same Bucs team that still contains most of the core that won the Super Bowl 2 years ago and finished 13-4 and lost by just 3 points to the eventual Super Bowl champions despite being riddled by injuries in the divisional rounds last season. So what happened? To understand what's going wrong, we first have to understand what has made the Bucs so successful over the past 2 seasons. The Bucs have had an excellent set of receivers in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin to go along with a reliable safety valve at tight end in Rob Gronkowski, who could both catch and block effectively. Their offensive line has been awesome over the past 2 years. Tom Brady has been fantastic, of course, at quarterback. Their run game has stepped up when they've needed it. Defensively, they've played with speed and physicality, affecting opposing quarterbacks as much as any team in football. With a pass rush led by Shaq Barrett, they have shut down opposing run games and have improved year by year in pass defense. The Bucs have been the most well-rounded roster for 2 years, for my money, in the entire NFL. And they've played like it too. Many are pointing to the coaching as the big issue with this team right now, but I don't think that's an adequate answer that answers the entire question. When you're 3-4 and coming off a blowout loss to the worst team in football, you don't just have one issue. Let's start with the offseason this team had. They lost Ali Marpet, one of the elite guards in the league. They lost Rob Gronkowski, still was among the best tight ends in football and was Tom Brady's best friend in the world, both to retirement. Those 2 losses have played a major part in the significant offensive decline the Bucs have suffered, not to mention the loss of Alex Kappa to the Bengals in free agency, another guard who had become an above-average player for them. They lost Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, 2 aging veterans who did regress last season, but they failed to address the edge position and signed another veteran, Akeem Hicks, who's been injured. They failed to address cornerback depth in the draft, something that significantly hurt them at times last season, specifically in both Rams games. As a result, liabilities like D. Delaney still play rotational snaps for them, and it causes the defense to struggle when they make rotations. And so even though the Bucs made flashy signings, such as Julio Jones in the offseason, there were still holes on the roster they failed to address, and that blame falls squarely on the shoulders of Jason Licht. The Bucs defense looks like the best in football through the first 3 weeks of the season, but on Sunday Night Football in Week 4 against the Kansas City Chiefs, they were shredded to the tune of 41 points, and since then they've looked quite mortal. In 2020, the Bucs ranked 3rd in pressure percentage. Last season, they ranked 2nd, and this season, they've fallen to 11th. Right now, guys on that defense are living off a fantastic Super Bowl performance from 20 months ago. A Super Bowl in which the Kansas City Chiefs were without essentially their entire starting 5 on the offensive line. They showed that with a healthy offensive line, they can shred this defense. Shaq Barrett, who was arguably the best player on the field in that Super Bowl, hasn't been his quite as disruptive self this season, ranking outside the top 20 in pressures among edge defenders. Joe Tryon has been fine as a complement, but their pressure numbers have combined for essentially as many as what Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, or Myles Garrett have gathered by themselves this season. Shaq Barrett is supposed to be that caliber of player, and he hasn't played like it. The interior defensive line has also been a huge disappointment. Vita Vea, who is supposed to be a superstar defensive lineman, has not come through at all this year. He's been a liability in run defense, posting a grade of below 47, and has provided some disruption as a pass rusher, but not enough given what he's hyped up to be. Against Creed Humphrey in Week 4, he was absolutely embarrassed on national TV. Guys like Nunez Roches, Golston, or especially rookie Logan Hall, have failed to pick up the slack. All 3 have been below average this season. The Bucs' forte under Bulls defensively has been stopping the run, yet they're ranked 17th in EPA versus the run this season. It'd be like if Stephen Clay were all of a sudden a slightly below average shooting backcourt. The Falcons ran for 4.9 yards per carry on the Bucs, and the Saints, Chiefs, and Panthers all hit 5 yards per carry or more against the Bucs, essentially running at will. Levante David has been very good as usual, but Devin White has failed to bounce back from a super disappointing 2021 season and has actually been just as bad as last season. He has the fourth highest missed tackle rate, 15.3%, among linebackers with at least 377 snaps in 2022. He's been talking about complacency and getting bored recently in interviews, and he's performed like a player that's complacent and bored this season, and appears to be another player living off the Super Bowl. For somebody that's supposed to be a defensive leader and is a defensive captain, he's been a complete liability. The secondary has actually been the best part of the defense. Carlton Davis has had some rough moments, but has overall been solid, while Jamel Dean and Antoine Winfield have been very good. The Bucs' pass defense as a whole has been as good as it's ever been under Todd Bowles, as only Kansas City and Carolina on limited attempts have thrown effectively against them. The Buccaneers' offensive line hasn't been great this season. The stats for them still look okay. They were 14th in run blocking grade last season and still ranked 14th this season. They have slipped in pass blocking from 2nd to 10th, but 10th is hardly a poor ranking. The problem is the Bucs' offensive line is the sole reason they're allowing pressures and sacks right now. PFF tracks allowed pressure, a stat that measures when a pressure is the quarterback's responsibility and when a pressure is an offensive lineman's responsibility. The Bucs ranked 5th worst in football among percentage of pressures that are the responsibility of the offensive line. The pass blocking was a major issue against the Cowboys and Packers, 2 games in which the offense struggled to score. The run blocking has been flat out comically bad over the last 2 weeks. Donovan Smith has returned from injury, and after an excellent 2021 season, he's been just merely solid in 2022. Nothing more. Luke Gadecki looks like he's playing with 2 left feet. He's been statistically the worst offensive lineman in football and a total liability. Robert Hainsey has actually been solid at center in place of the injured Ryan Jensen, but nothing more than solid. Shaq Mason, who was the major acquisition on the offensive line in the offseason, has been okay, but he hasn't lived up to his elite potential and elite play in the past, posting the worst PFF grade of his career so far since his rookie season back in 2015 and the worst run blocking grade of his career ever. The only player on the line that has really been anything more than average is Tristan Wirfs, who's been very good once again. The Bucs line has been fine, but it hasn't been what it was in years past, which has helped result in an out-of-sync passing game and just flat-out non-existent run game. Last season, the Bucs ranked 5th in adjusted line yards. This season, they rank 31st. They've gone from one of the best in the league to one of the worst in that category. Tampa has struggled immensely to run the ball at any capacity. They have failed to hit 3.5 yards per carry since week 1 and are currently last in rush offense, EPA, and yards per carry. It's actually been historically futile. The Bucs have been averaging the 9th lowest yards per carry of any team in the Super Bowl era, and since EPA began being tracked in 1999, their current rush offense EPA is the 2nd lowest in that stat's history. Fournette looks slow. He's either injured or has put on too much weight or is both, or however, he just doesn't look like the way he used to. White has provided a spark at times, but has also been a problem at other times. They're so inept that teams have begun not even gearing for the run, yet they continue to be totally ineffective at running the ball, putting all the pressure on Brady and the receivers. The passing game is out of sync. Chris Godwin looks slow and hurt. He's either still dealing with lingering injury or has lost a step. Mike Evans is still great, but they don't have a reliable third option. Russell Gage and Scotty Miller have underachieved, and Cade Otton is solid, but still too young and unproven and inconsistent to be a viable third option in the passing game. Tom Brady has played well, but even the GOAT isn't blameless. He throws low passes too often nowadays, and his release is almost too quick sometimes. It doesn't always allow for the route to fully develop and get the most out of the play. He's not played at a top 5 level the way he was last season when he was arguably the MVP of football, but more so than his play has been the tone he's set for the season. Brady appears to be highly distracted and doesn't appear to be giving the Bucs the full priority right now. Between the divorce, the flirtation with the Dolphins, missing camp, going to a wedding 2 days before the Steelers game, and overall just looking miserable in every game this season, none of that sets a good tone or message for the team. And as a leader and as the team's primary leader, that negatively affects the entire team. While I don't think coaching is the only issue, it certainly has been the biggest. God, the coaching has been terrible. Byron Leftwich runs on first down too frequently for a team that can't run the ball effectively at all, and he fails to ever scheme his weapons open or add anything to the passing game of usefulness. The Bucs ranked 26th in third down offense and 29th in red zone offense. Both were major issues against Dallas, Green Bay, and Pittsburgh. Bulls too is at fault. The Buccaneers ranked 25th in run defense, or my bad, third down defense, and 31st in red zone defense. Their run defense has also significantly regressed, the sign of a poor situational team. They miss Bruce Arians' fire and no risk it, no biscuit mentality. And while I've been very critical of Bruce Arians in the past, it's clear that he at least provided a spark and provided more of an explosive element to this offense, an explosive element that this offense is desperately missing right now. But the Bucs have a ton of issues, but they have all the talent to turn it around and be a legitimately very good team. They're still first in their extremely weak division, and the NFC as a whole is really weak and up for grabs. But with that said, they have a lot of issues to fix and adjustments to both game plan and mentality to make. Otherwise, this team is going to get absolutely dragged by whoever they play in the playoffs, if they're lucky enough to even make it there, which would be a highly underwhelming end of the career of the greatest NFL player of all time. We'll see if the Bucs can turn it around. Personally, I lean towards no, but you can't ever doubt Tom Brady with 100% certainty, can you?